America, Stephen Cruiser here for PJTV on the red carpet for the first ever Ronnie Awards, and I'm talking to the Ronnie Awards host, none other than PJTV's Bill Whittle himself. Bill, I just wanted to ask you, is it true that you prep for these things by bathing in Michael Moore's tears?
It's hard to get them as much as it was right after the last election, but more like a sweat really is. You know what, I didn't want to think about that, Steve. The main thing I'm really just excited about all the people here, and you know, when you talk about conservatives in Hollywood, you bring out the big names in the Hollywood business, which would be Bill Whittle and Stephen Cruiser. Is there an E-list, really? And if there is, how could we get up to it? But no, we're going to have a lot of fun with this tonight. I think I'm really looking forward to it.
Now, as the host of the first ever conservative award show for film and television, do you think you will be able to safely eat in Los Angeles again without getting your food poisoned?
No, I'm never going to eat lunch in this town again, Steve. But I kind of accepted that when we took the job, you know. One of the nice things about this is you really do get to write off your future, really. You know, any sense of working in Hollywood has pretty much been over for a long time for both of us, so we do get to sit on the outside. But you know what the really truth about that is we do get to take the shots that we wouldn't get to take if we did actually ever hope to work in this town again.
Yeah, and we are filming this in a bunker, by the way. And one last question for you, Bill. What are you most looking forward to for tonight's inaugural broadcast?
Well, we've got a lot of great categories, and I think they're all interesting. I like the fact that we get to name them the Ronnies. That means a lot, I think, to many people. But my favorite category, I think, is going to be most patriotic film. And the reason is because I think the front runners are probably going to be American Sniper, which, as you know, has got the left just completely in absolute hysterics. And I think there's a strong case that It's a Wonderful Life might be able to get in there, and or maybe Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. You know, these kind of films that are not so much about the military, but about America, and that's a different kind of definition of patriotism, and I'm very curious to know how the Academy's going to vote on those.
Thank you very much, Bill Whittle, the host of the first ever Ronnie Awards, and of course, every time you mention that you love America, 10 red, white, and blue angels do get their wings. Enjoy the show, ding, boys ding, and girls.
Well, hello there, and welcome to the first ever Ronnie Awards. I'm happy to be your host, Bill Whittle, as we go on a magical journey throughout all of cinema and television to right the wrongs of liberal Hollywood, to recognize all of these great conservative achievements in cinema. Thank you. To hear more about our nominees tonight, you can go to the Members Only section or the PJ Store and watch the whole special series Red State, Red Carpet, where we have in-depth analysis on all of our categories tonight. But for all of tonight's awards, I'm joined by PJ Media co-founder, an Oscar-nominated screenwriter, Roger L. Simon, and also a successful writer and my co-host on The Klavan and Whittle Show, Mr. Andrew Klavan. Please hold your applause until the end of the program. They'll be sharing some thoughts on these conservative winners tonight, which brings us to our first category. You know, when you go to see a movie, you get high production value, but it doesn't stay with you in your living room. That's the power a television series has. You might tune in once a week to catch more and more of your favorite shows. So, for achievement in conservative television, the nominees are 24, Duck Dynasty, Firefly, Star Trek, and The Andy Griffith Show. And the winner is Star Trek. Hey. Star Trek. I'm going to hold my fire on this one because I'll close this one. Yeah. Andrew, does Star Trek get to be the most conservative TV show in the history of...
I don't know about that, but I know if they hadn't given it to you, you'd have walked.
I would have just out of here.
But you know, the thing that always does always charm me when I go back to Star Trek is the humanist values of it. That the Captain Kirk saying to the powers that be, even if you could fix our world from up on high, we don't want you to. We want to do it ourselves. And that is a great American and conservative value.
What do you think, Roger?
Well, here, I certainly agree with that. But here's the other thing about it is that if there are liberals watching this show right now, they'll be shocked to know that Star Trek is a conservative show.
Of course.
They would be on the floor yelling at us and saying, "What do you mean?"
Next Generation is an extremely liberal show, but the original Star Trek is, in fact, perhaps the most conservative show ever, and I'll tell you why. Captain Kirk represents the Federation, and the Federation is America. He's a person who is given absolute authority to represent his civilization in places where no one has gone before. And he's not conflicted, and he's not unsure of himself, and he's not ashamed of himself. The Enterprise is a research vessel on a peaceful mission, but they have phasers and photon torpedoes because there's bad guys out there. But the real reason I think Star Trek is so conservative is because of exactly what you said, Drew. Many times in the course of that show, the Enterprise will orbit a planet where humans or human-like beings are enslaved.
Why don't you join us?
In your own private paradise.
The spores have made it that.
The plants act as a repository for thousands of microscopic spores until they find a human body to inhabit.
In return, they give you complete health and peace of mind.
That's paradise.
We have no need or want, Captain.
It's a true Eden, Jim.
No wants, no needs. We weren't meant for that, none of us. Man stagnates if he has no ambition, no desire to be more than he is.
We have what we need.
Except a challenge.
Kirk has the moral authority to say, we are going to destroy these artificial constraints on your freedom, and you are going to have to get out there and figure it out just like any other free people. He makes people grow up and be fully human.
It's kind of the opposite of 2001: A Space Odyssey.
I went back and rewatched it not that long ago, and I wrote a book called Empire of Lies, which has a kind of William Shatner type character in it. And I was stunned by the certainty of its morality and its humanism and its Americanism.
Yeah, this Prime Directive nonsense came very, very late as a one-off tool. But James T. Kirk saw humans enslaved, and he said, not in my watch, not with those big phasers we got in orbit. You know, go off you go, reptile-headed computer that keeps David's soul living in a state of perpetual happiness. Anyway, moving on. This group of actresses has made us laugh or cry and delivered consistently great conservative performances. So in the category of Best Conservative Actress, the nominees are Heather Locklear, Jessica Simpson, Joan Rivers, Patricia Heaton, and Shirley Temple. And the winner is, boy, this is a tough one, Patricia Heaton. Thank God, ladies and gentlemen. Our friend Patty Heaton, who we both know very well. I have to say, some of those names are a pretty big indication of the dearth of Jessica Simpson, Heather Locklear. These are not in-depth performances, but Patty Heaton is not only a great actress, she's just a really great person.
She's a great person. She is very funny, which is very hard to do. You know, it's very hard to be a funny actor. There aren't that many of them, and she really does it well, and she does it without condescending to the characters she plays. She really does. Now, there is something weirdly fascinating about Jessica Simpson, but I don't even want to think about what it is.
No, we don't.
No. I love Patty Heaton, too, and I know her, and she's great. But I have to put in a word for Joan Rivers. Because there has been no greater spokesperson against radical Islam in our time than Joan Rivers. Fashion and radical Islam in one person. You can't be me.
Definitely she'll be missed, yeah.
I have to say the thing I like best about Patty Heaton is the degree of control she maintains over her political position as a public speaker. She's not a public figure, I meant to say. Patty Heaton's not the kind of person who wears conservatism on her sleeve the same way that Michael Moore or Matt Damon wear progressivism on their sleeve. But there are some things where Patty Heaton will feel like it's important that she make a statement about, and she'll step up and she'll make that statement, but she won't generally do it on talk shows, and she's managed to keep her on-screen presence and her off-screen political statements really quite separate in a way that most progressives don't.
I mean, let's be honest, some of that's self-preservation. Yeah. I mean, if you start doing that,
it's also serving the audience, though.
Oh,
the audience may not want your political
it's the right thing to do.
Face,
it's totally the right thing to do, but it's also self-preservation.
And it's class.
Yeah,
and she's just nothing but class. I'm very proud to know her. Let's move on to their male counterparts. The nominees for Best Actor are steely-eyed missile men who've embodied what it means to be a patriotic, red-blooded American, and they are, and this is not going to come as a surprise, Charlton Heston, Clint Eastwood, Gary Sinise, John Wayne, and John Voight. Those are 5 men I'd be willing to follow into the gates of hell.
Amazing what a wider selection there is of men than of women.
Yeah, it really is. And the winner is? well, this is no surprise. John Wayne, ladies and gentlemen, John Wayne, the Ur-American, the American, America defined, right? What is it about John Wayne that makes him, do you think, the most conservative actor who?
You know, it's really interesting. If you go back and watch his movies, which I do all the time, they are far more complex, far more nuanced, far more conflicted than anything anybody ever said. Hondo is a great 70-minute film that takes a really mature, interesting look at the relationships between cowboys and Indians. Sands of Iwo Jima, a great patriotic war film, but very, very like Clint Eastwood's American Sniper, very aware of the cost of war and all that. And he is just like Eastwood. He is just iconic. There is something about the way he walks, moves, talks that expresses individualism and tough guyism. I mean, listen, if you want to talk about classic acting, I would say Voight and Sinise are probably the two great actors on that list. But if you want to talk about being an iconic movie star who represents America, you can't beat John Wayne.
What about it, Roger?
Among my favorite movies of all time is Red River.
Great.
And also Stagecoach. But the other thing about Wayne was he was an incredible defender of the right side of people during the blacklist period. He had more guts than any of them, and he actually stood up for people on both sides in remarkable situations as a true American. I mean, he was sort of the Ronald Reagan. He was more of an amazing screen presence than Reagan, obviously. Not a politician like that, but he was an amazing. He also took an active hand in the screenplays a lot, I understand. He was not just a pretty face.
It's interesting, too, that Charlton Heston, only guy in Hollywood who stood up for Vanessa Redgrave, a stone leftist, when she was blacklisted for her views on Palestine. He stood up and he hired her to play Lady Macbeth. These guys stood for freedom off camera, too.
Charlton Heston marched with Martin Luther King when it wasn't the trendy thing to do.
Like many Americans this summer, I could no longer pay only lip service to a cause that was so urgently right and in a time that is so urgently now.
In addition to Charlton Heston's stand on civil rights before civil rights became cool and trendy, when it was a real risk, a genuine risk, he had that kind of courage. And Heston, of course, his advocacy for the Second Amendment, Mike Cole, they hit this musket when they take it from Mike Cole, dead hands. He really does have the authority of Abraham or Moses or somebody saying, this is the truth and there I stand. Clint Eastwood, a person who I think also is just a remarkable filmmaker, not just a film actor. But the thing about Clint that I admire is that Clint is very nuanced. Clint will do films almost all across the political spectrum. I was struck by Flags of Our Fathers and Sands of Iwo Jima. The idea that he would go to a location and tell the exact same story from two different sides is a real form of kind of emotional and artistic flexibility that you wouldn't expect from the great stone-faced, kind of thing. I don't think we can let Gary Sinise go without mention. For the unbelievable amount of work and time that he puts into our troops with his Lieutenant Dan Band. I think he's been to Iraq 6 times, Afghanistan 5 times, and Leavenworth, Kansas, and they're in the military too. And finally, our friend John Voight, who told me once, he was so heavily recruited by the left when he first appeared because he was so all-American looking. He was the all-American kid. And Tom Hayden wanted this guy to represent leftist values in the biggest possible way, and since then has come out kind of handsome.
I knew John many years before you guys did, because I used to work with, when I was on the left, with a director named Paul Williams who made a movie with John called The Revolutionary, about a left-wing kid in a Park Avenue apartment, who rebels against Dad, and it's sympathetic to the revolution. So John has made that journey. And he's remarkable and tremendously courageous.
Great actor.
Look, there again, he was great in all kinds of films, including one of the best left-wing films, Coming Home. He was fantastic. And then, of course, in Midnight Cowboy, and on and on.
Performance. Yeah. I have to say one thing about John Wayne, too, just for myself very briefly. John Wayne, I hope nobody takes this the wrong way, is perhaps the worst actor I've ever seen. He really is. He's an astonishingly, shockingly bad actor. And so why would he win this award? And I think it's because the one quality of John Wayne that impressed me the most about him was his unashamedness of it. The boldness of his patriotism, just that you knew instantly and always that this guy was going to stand where the flag was, and it didn't matter what the environment was, it didn't matter what the circumstances. When John Wayne loved America to the point that John Wayne is America. And in a way, the qualities of manhood that we admire are not nuanced rhetorical qualities, right? They are kind of an awkward sort of, oh, Pilgrim, you know, it's like I have to go out and defend the family against Indians or wolves or Japanese or communists or whatever. He was one of a kind.
He was one of a kind.
Now that brings us to a special part of tonight's program, and that's simply this. The legacy of Ronald Reagan lives deep in the hearts of all conservatives with his presidential accomplishments, including, you know, little things like ending the Cold War, stabilizing our economy, and fashioning a cultural rebirth of this great country. But he was also a successful actor and was even the president of the Screen Actors Guild. So tonight, at the award show bearing his name, we'd like to take a minute to honor the true best conservative actor and spokesperson of all time. We'd like to give our Lifetime Achievement Award to Ronald Reagan, ladies and gentlemen. So, Roger, you know, Ronald Reagan's career, I think of all the things in Ronald Reagan's career, the most telling things in Ronald Reagan's career was how little time he got when he died during the Academy Awards ceremony that year. Here's a man who went from being an actor, which in many cases, appropriately enough, is a despised profession that, you know, that ranks with, you know, gutter snipe and prostitute. And he went to become governor of California, president of the United States. And when he died, his appearance on the Academy Memorial film was just like that. Like, yeah, we don't want to. What does that tell you, though?
I do hold that against you.
On some level, isn't that a badge of honor in some way?
Oh, it's disgusting. I mean, it's disgusting. But you know, one of the more interesting things about Reagan, there's a lot of interesting new writing about him. His period when he was the head of SAG at the Screen Actors Guild is very formative. He was then still a Democrat, but he was inside a union situation and began to learn the limitations of unions. It's a remarkable period to read about. There's some books coming out about it now. And his changeover, he's a prototype of, you know, some of us at this table here, he did go through changes. A lot of people go through changes. A lot of people don't. But it's kind of interesting how he did it. And I think an instructional, a great movie to be made, incidentally, about the early days of Ronald Reagan in Hollywood. Quite amazing.
Yeah, Reagan famously said, I didn't leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left me.
I think that's true for a lot of us. I mean, I think, you know, when people talk about, you know, you and I have learned not to call the left liberal because they're not liberal about anything. They really are not liberal about anything. And I think that that's the way I feel about it. When people ask me why I became a conservative, I say I became a conservative because I'm a liberal. I want people to do whatever it is they want to do as long as they don't scare the horses.
If you were the party of JFK, you might still be part of it.
I think that's absolutely true. And I think Reagan would have too.
I just have to relate personally that when I was a young person in the theater surrounded by other actors, I was told he was an idiot and he was senile and he's just reading a teleprompter and a script. But it was only much later I learned that he learned how to be Ronald Reagan on those years when he was on the GE tour, touring the country, talking to American people, and sometimes groups of 20 or less, talking to them, finding out what they wanted. He would sit down and write. He created his own political philosophy. His conservatism worked because he was a great communicator. He wasn't afraid of emotion, but his real quality as a politician was his general cheerfulness, the happy warrior. And he's the only politician that has their own demographic named after him. There are Reagan Democrats, people who normally would vote Democrat but liked him so much either personally or because of the way he communicated that it was a significant part of that pie, went over to the Republicans and gave us the biggest wins we've ever had.
Boy, is there a lot to learn from him right now.
You bet. Happy warrior. Yeah. Well, these films that we're about to discuss have inspired us to look to the skies, and I'm not talking about space exploration. Faith-based films use biblical imagery or religious piety to demonstrate a holier path, and the nominees for achievement in faith-based films are The Blind Side, Chariots of Fire, It's a Wonderful Life, Passion of the Christ, and The Ten Commandments. And the Ronnie goes to, oh, I'm actually glad about this, It's a Wonderful Life. Maybe the least, hold for audience applause, yes, and well-deserved. Perhaps the least overtly religious of the films on the list, but on some level, certainly the most American, I would say, of bringing religion into America.
You know, I always think that's the way to do it. C.S. Lewis has a wonderful line where he said, "I believe in Christianity as I believe in the rising of the sun, not because I see it, but because I see everything else by it." And I think the best religious stories don't have religion in it. You know, you look at
that's why Blindside is good.
Yeah, you look at the Lord of the Rings, written by a devout Catholic to basically put forward his Catholic point of view. There's no religion in it at all. It is the context in which a great story takes place. And in my opinion, it's the only context in which a great story can take place. And I think that's what's great about it. It's a wonderful one.
Well, and Passion of the Christ, Roger, as we discussed.
Well, you know, what's interesting about Passion of the Christ, because as a Jewish guy, I look at Passion of the Christ a bit outside, but I admire its filmmaking tremendously.
And you have to admire the risk, right? Gibson's Folly, $25 million out of pocket, $750 million domestic. Biggest paycheck of all time.
Yeah, it was. Look, everything about it in terms of the filmmaking, I applaud. I mean, I'm not a believer in the divinity of Christ because I'm in a different religion, but I've actually come to respect Christianity tremendously, so I don't have an issue with Christianity at all. It's just that the effect of the film on me would be different. I sat in an audience, in a theater with, I would assume, a majority Christian audience. They were quite moved by it. And to me, because I'm not a Christian, the odd reaction I have to it is that I thought it was too violent.
A lot of people say
because too violent for me, well made, but too violent. Because if you don't believe in the divinity of Christ, then you watch the repeated mutilation of this man and you're going, wait, that's too much. It's interesting, whereas if you a believer in him as a Messiah, then you don't have that reaction.
It's certainly indicated to Hollywood and anyone who's paying attention where the heart and wallets of America unreached were. So let's move on now to the documentaries that get us to think about an issue in a different light, to the comedies that called Kim Jong-un a Ronnie tyrant. Very Ronnie. And these overtly political films really drive home a point, and mostly a conservative point of view. So the nominees for achievement in conservative political films are 2016, Obama's America, Mitt, Not Evil, Just Wrong, Team America, World Police, and The Lives of Others. And the winner is 2016, Obama's America by Dinesh D'Souza. Roger, let's start out with you. Straight out documentary, kind of thing that people would go in and see and realize, I don't think this is the guy that I was sold. I don't think I'm going to be voting for him. Made a lot of impact like that. But one of these nominees, I know, is one of your personal favorite films, and maybe you'd like to talk about why.
I'll talk briefly about The Lives of Others because I think it's the greatest film if you want to see what it's like to live under communism. I mean, it really tells you on personal terms what it's like to live under communism, not just like the day in life you know that it's bad in the Gulag and you're in a slave labor camp. This is what it's like daily life, which is almost as bad. Now, skipping over to Dinesh, because he's the man of the hour, and I think Dinesh deserves incredible praise because he has actually done something by himself as an entrepreneur. He's a brilliant guy, but he has entrepreneurially gone out there and done something that should be an inspiration to everybody on the right who's interested in the arts, because he has said, okay, I'm going to quit belly aching. I'm going to quit being a victim and a victimologist, the thing that we on the right always hate, people playing the victim, and we correctly hate that. Then he said, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to whine about, well, sometimes conservatives, I can't get a job in Hollywood because I'm a conservative. He just went out and did it. Bravo.
Bravo. I think Dinesh D'Souza did two things that were really powerful, that made that film as powerful as they were. One of them was he told the story largely not only through Barack Obama's own words, but in many cases with his own voice. That is a powerful indication of validity of what he was trying to say.
At night in the dorms, we discussed neocolonialism, Frantz Fanon, Eurocentrism, and patriarchy. I chose my friends carefully. The more politically active black students, the foreign students, the Chicanos, the Marxist professors and structural feminists and punk rock performance poets.
And secondly, he got into the movie and made a human connection with Obama's brother and with other people that showed that he was actually a reasonable, nice, kind guy who was just asking questions kind of thing. Both of these techniques, Drew, were very effective in why this documentary became the second highest grossing documentary of all time.
It is a testimony to what Dinesh did, that the government of the United States came after him for what was essentially a misdemeanor and threatened him with, I think it was like 15 years in prison, bullied him and hounded him into a penalty that he did not deserve. That penalty, as far as I'm concerned, is a bigger award than any award we can give him or any award the Academy can give him.
And he could not be with us here today to accept his award because of the prosecution of the state,
free speech,
of the giant left-wing state that has prosecuted him for having the audacity to speak out against the government in America.
You know, Dinesh, to his credit, has admitted he made a mistake. But if you compare the way that case was prosecuted to the way any other similar case is prosecuted, it is a travesty. It's not even close.
It's the worst form of political repression.
And that's his award, because that is what we admire him for, and the fact that he came back and made another film and will make another film after that.
That's
hasn't been silent.
Yeah.
That's a testimony.
He is the American equivalent of some guy in the Soviet Union who went out and did something and went in the gulag for it.
Absolutely right. Yeah, he went in the gulag
He's been put in a kind of not so bad.
Not so bad. No,
he wasn't
still a better country than that.
But in the wrong way.
That's right. We're a better country than that. The fact that this could even happen is inconceivable to me. And by the way, don't miss 2016's director Dinesh D'Souza's acceptance speech in the third part of the Red State Red Carpet series, now available at the PJ store. So, and Dinesh, again, a hero for all of us. These films have sent waves of patriotism over the land of the free and the home of the brave. They encourage us to do more, to preserve our freedoms and also to honor those who defend them. So the nominees for achievement in patriotic films are American Sniper, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Sands of Iwo Jima, The Patriot, and Top Gun. And the Ronnie goes to Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Interesting. We did, as with all of these categories, a special segment on each one of these, and that the most patriotic film was, in fact, not a war movie. You would tend to equate patriotic films with war movies, but it wasn't. It was a film about how America worked. And
about democracy.
About democracy, right?
About democracy and the power of the common person who's so despised by these Hollywood elites.
And like everything Capra did, a tremendously honest film about the corruption of democracy. The senators in that film could be the senators in the Senate this very day. They are corrupt. They have special interests. They're tied up. And everything about the government is wrong, except for one guy who comes in from the outside, who's not in the government, and brings it all crashing down through the power of an independent press. Remember, the press is on the side of corruption in that movie. The press is totally on the side of the corruption. It's the little boys with their wagons going out to spread their hand-printed newspapers that turn the tide and that help
the bloggers.
Kids in their pajamas.
One reporter who's turned by a girl he likes. And
let me ask you this: do either of you happen to know, anecdotally, or have any indication at all, why Frank Capra, almost unique among American directors, had such actual love for the American people, for the common American person, understood them so well, understood their values so well, that all he did was put the common man into the center of these movies. It's a Wonderful Life, Meet John Doe. Meet John Doe is a terrific movie. It's a fantastic movie. He would take the essence of what is despised by modern Hollywood, flyover country, where there's knuckle dragger, nobodies live, take them, put them in the center of the spotlight, and show the world why these are not only not nobodies, but they're the best people on the earth.
Well, it happened more then. It happened more then. Even in movies like Sullivan's Travels, you see that instinct that the common man is a good guy. And we should give a little bit of a credit to a man named Robert Riskin, who wrote most of those movies for Capra. I mean, we're all writers here, and someone came up with the characters and the plot, and it's a pretty damn good one.
Fair enough. Well, our final category tonight has films that may not even set out to make a conservative entertainment statement of any kind whatsoever, but the messages that they contain are all right of center anyway. So the nominees for Best Conservative Message in a Film are 1984, Dark Knight Rises, October Sky, Red Dawn, and The Lego Movie. I haven't seen the Lego Movie, but the winner is, let's see, the Ronnie Award goes to, okay, Red Dawn. Awesome!
This is
the original Red Dawn.
A secretly conservative movie?
Yeah, I don't know if it's that secretly conservative.
Or the best.
This is the emergency broadcast system. We are under attack by conventional forces of the Russian army. Large areas of the Midwest may have been overrun.
One of the things we've talked about is that we never get to see socialism, you know, as the bad guys. Now, we saw it in the lives of others, but that wasn't an American film. That was a German film.
Right.
Red Dawn was an extremely popular film. Red Dawn showed us what happens when communists take over a country. They put people in camp and they start executing hostages. And it took the war that had been happening in Vietnam and in Poland and in Hungary and in Korea and in Honduras and in El Salvador, this fight between two ideologies, and put it in America, where everybody could see what it would look like if we lose this battle against this evil collectivist philosophy.
It's amazing to me how many films have been made about the blacklist, which was an issue of communist writers forced into the horrible position of having to make an honest living, but because they couldn't write movies anymore. And how many films? Are there any films about the gulags? Is there one film?
No, there is A Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich.
Yeah, that's okay. That's
it's a pretty good movie, but it's long ago.
But really, I mean, and so many films about Nazism. I mean, a million films about Nazism, but none about this horrible, horrible slave state that almost got away with taking over the entire West.
But 1984. If you ask many young people, 1984 is taught today in schools as an example of what would happen if the conservatives take over this repressive world where everything's great. It is INGSOC, English socialism. It is the giant socialist state. And the one thing I think needs to be said so strongly about 1984, among the brilliant, there's so many brilliant threads in 1984, but the genius of 1984 was Orwell's realization of the power of language. When Orwell would have a guy saying, we're working on our 7th dictionary, which has 40,000 fewer words than the 6th dictionary, eliminating words. And the idea that if you don't have the word honor, liberty, justice, heroism, courage, if it's only ungood or double plus ungood, the ability to control the language is the ability to control the thought.
Right.
We see that in front of us all the time.
Political correctness.
Yes, that's what political correctness is.
And you're right. And they do think that that's they think 1984 is about rightism.
Yeah,
it's about leftism.
That's right. Well, they don't want to.
They think the Nazis were rightists.
Political correctness is the idea that conservatives are double plus ungood, and therefore you don't have to listen to any of their ideas. Just
I'm triple
ignore
plus
them. Well, all of the films have been phenomenal, but we're conservative, so we don't give participation trophies. I want to thank our Academy of Conservative Arts and Sciences, which throughout the series have included Dinesh D'Souza, Alfonso Rachel, Scott Ott, Stephen Cruiser, and joining me for this fabulous award show has been Roger L. Simon, who you can find at PJ Media, and Andrew Clavin, who joins me here on the Clavin Whittle Show right here for members on PJTV. Don't forget to check out the other videos in this series called Red State, Red Carpet. They're at the members section at the PJ Store. I'm Bill Whittle, and for all of us here at the Academy and PJTV, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.